All right, so this is the Bohn Contex 30. I rebuilt this pin matrix in here. It still doesn't work perfectly, but it works a lot better than before I had rebuilt it. Before I could barely do anything at all. Um, it still has some issues. I don't know, maybe a fourth or fifth of the time that I do this, but let's try doing 25 times 25 here. Okay, so that worked. Just for laughs, I'm gonna do what is it? 355 by 113. So you notice I'm not pressing this button. I'm adding zeros instead, and the reason for that is mine does not work super well. I just do that to clear the whatever division register here. Let's see how well that works. 3.14592 3.14159 Yep, that was perfect. Okay, so there you go. Anyway, this thing, I'm sure like whatever, 13 people are going to see this, but I'm hoping that if, one person that's having trouble rebuilding this sees this, that's basically why I'm making this video here. Okay, one of the issues I had when I was disassembling this thing was there's a tiny ball catch, the little ball bearing guy, that holds this lever in place. So there's two holes, and the ball is, held in place by a little lever. And I'll show it. I have a little, do a little drawing of that. Um, so there's a ball right here that's held against the top of the keyboard assembly by a little brass spring guy. And there's the two holes. So when the matrix slides back, um, it hits this lever and pushes this into position. If this ball catch isn't there, so for me, the ball bearing fell out. And I remember looking at it and thinking, I have no idea what this is or where this goes to. And I lost it. And then when I finally figured it out, I had to get a Dremel and like basically make something to replace it. So I hope you don't have to do that. But if this isn't there, this lever won't be held in place properly. And one of the basically the main function of this is to hold the key down. If it's not in place, these keys will lock up. So the issue I was having was every key, the only key that would work would be the zero key. All the other keys I couldn't press them down at all. I had to take this thing apart to figure that one out. Okay, another issue I had was when I first tried to disassemble this thing, there's only two screws that need to be removed, little 2.5 millimeter Allen key screws to get this motor plate off. All of these little flathead screws, you don't need to touch these unless you're trying to remove the switch or the motor. I made the mistake of pulling these out first and then trying to get these back installed was, you know, a headache. If you're just trying to pull this thing off, it's pretty, I mean, it's not easy. These things are really obnoxious because, I mean, what, you only have a couple, um, like 4 degrees of rotation free here, whatever, on that one. But when those are removed, this little hook, um, there's a little hook right here that this whole thing hinges on. So you just need to rotate it, like this, and then this can be pulled off. Another issue I had with the multiplication key, especially, there's a little hook back here. You can see the top of it held in place by a spring. And I couldn't figure out what this thing did. Didn't really know why it needed to be held in place with a spring. But when I had this thing fully reassembled, everything would work except multiplication. Whatever. In here, 523 times 9. When I would press a key, nothing. It would just add it, and the matrix wouldn't reset. So it's supposed to be held like this, so that every time you multiply the entry by a number, all it does is keep this in place and index it by 1. Mine was keeping it in place. It was not indexing it, and it was just, adding it once, basically. And I had to figure this one out. I drew a picture. So this is the other side of the matrix. So this was whatever, facing the front. This is the view from the back. So you have, key 7, 8, and 9. Here's a little guy that moves back and forth. Inside the function block, there's a little thin lever that's hinged kind of at the bottom. And the only reason for this little hinge piece is so that when multiplication is depressed, or I guess also division, this thing hinges clockwise, which pulls this out. And this is the piece that basically enables it to keep repeating the same operation when you're multiplying. So make sure that there's a little hook in here. Kind of hard to see. I'll try to get a better view of that. Nope, there's really not a good way to see that. You're just going to have to trust me on that one. So I had an issue with these 3 levers over here. Try to do the best view of this. Don't try not to lose a finger when I do this, but let's say I want to add some numbers. This lever pushes this one all the way back, which in turn will slam the matrix back and trigger that ball catch. So I'll see if I can see it. When it slams back, it hits this guy. But this guy right here is only, let me do this. Let's do 55 times. So I've depressed the multiplication key there. And then this is there so that this doesn't clear when you multiply. So if I do 55 times, I don't know, let's do 8. You can see that the reason it does that is so that you can actually multiple add something without it clearing. And then if you push this all the way back, it will release that. But this lever right here, when when it would cycle, this piece would lock onto here. So it would this would be down sort of, and then this would go far enough back to where it would rest with this little tooth against it like that. And that was causing this thing it would still work, but it was very hard to turn. It was hard enough that when I would try to do an operation, this would turn just enough. So, I mean, when you press add, this thing, all it does when you mechanically, when you press the button down, is push it just enough or release it to where it can get to that position. So maybe 3 degrees, which is enough for this switch to drop down, trigger the motor to turn on, and then once it's completed a revolution, the little pawl here will close the switch or open it. And with mine, I was hitting the button and it was going down, but it was just locking up enough that it wouldn't quite turn enough for these gears to mesh with the motor. And so I'd have a motor spinning and this thing wasn't doing anything. And that took me so long to figure out that hopefully if someone's having that problem, It's just a simple fix. This little piece right here is really flimsy. I mean, to bend this thing, it took like zero effort. So I think what happened was I probably bent it a little bit when I was disassembling it. But once I bent it back, everything started to work pretty well. Okay, I wanted to show kind of the pin matrix and these little levers in action here. So I'm going to type in, let's say, 0.7003 times, let's do like 4. So I've got it unplugged so I can point out what's going on here. But it starts to go down, and you can see, hopefully, I mean, this lighting's pretty bad, but this is kind of whatever, 20 degrees rotated. There's a few pins. So like there's 2, there's like one right here, maybe, that are being held in place. And that's because there is an actual 0 pin, and it's the top pin. And the 0 pin is also the only pin that doesn't have a spring that depresses it. There's a little lever instead. I have a little picture of that. I can probably show you, but these ones are being caught on the 0 pin, and the rest of them, see, as it goes through, they go all the way down, or as far down as they need to before they hit the pin. It's in the matrix, and then it rolls back up, and rolling back up is the operation that actually puts it in the register or adds it. So you can see the ones that are on 0 are just staying where they are, and nothing's being added to that register or that whatever place in the register, while the rest of these are repeatedly adding that digit. Okay, so we got another one. There we go. And on the last one, so I just did the last of the however many I pressed, the index to the matrix one to the right. One of the issues I had, and I think that with division especially, this thing doesn't do very well. And I believe that part of that reason is part, if you, let's say you rebuilt the matrix, so it's not just that all of these are terrible. Typically the button to press, let me, there we go. So usually when you want to do a division, you would type in a number here. Clear this. Let's say 333. And then you press this down. Now, mine doesn't work very well, and the reason for that is probably because when I was rebuilding this matrix, I bent something. I'm not sure. It doesn't actually stop the machine from doing any of the operations, but when this is pressed down, I used to think, or I think that my initial thought was, okay, so this releases the matrix lock so that it can slide back because it's held with the spring. So it wants to go this way. So I can manually shift that all the way back. And this thing, you can see the holes on the top of the matrix. It also has to add zeros to all of them. So every time I do a division like this, whatever, 25, and I press this down and manually move it over, it has to add a 0 to every single one of these after the 25. But I figured out that, when I'm doing a division, I don't know, it's not plugged in right now, but if I just manually go 35 and then add the zeros in separately, I think it does a better job of actually making sure those zeros are all at the right spacing. Because doing this, you basically depress. You can see the 0 lever is depressed when you hold this down. It has to add the zeros just by this sliding past the 0 key that's already depressed. I have a lot better luck, at least when I do divisions, by just adding zeros after everything. instead of using this button here. Okay, I wanted to show a back view, or sorry, a bottom view of this thing, mainly because of these two levers right here. When I was taking this thing apart, I noticed that when they built this thing, they have a window right here for these two, and I took note of that because they sure they did that for a reason, probably because these things can get locked up pretty easily. You can see there's two levers here. They're both held in with a spring. This one and that one, and you have to make sure when you're putting the pin matrix back in, because that's what this is. These teeth right here are attached to the pin matrix. So if I don't know, let's add a number. You can kind of see right above those two levers the matrix moving. And during addition or an operation, so I'm gonna press the addition over here. You can see that the oh, okay, yep, there it goes. I got stuck a little bit. When you press addition, the bottom lever pushes the top lever and holds the matrix in place just during an operation. And then, by the time the operation is finished, this lever drops back down. And then right at the end of a cycle, so the last thing that happens, mechanically at least, is that little lever right here I was talking about earlier, that this gets pulled back. And then right when that hook on the bottom I was just showing releases the matrix, this then gives it a good old slap and pushes it all the way back and resets everything. Another thing, I'm not sure if someone else maybe had noticed this or they can give me some advice on it, but there's a few hooks on the bottom side that have springs attached. So there's like two right here. And then there's this guy, which is clearly missing its spring. And I wasn't sure, that's right underneath the whatever, this mechanism in the front. So I'm not sure if that was just left over from an older Contex and they reused the part, or if there's just nothing there, but it doesn't seem to be causing any issues with mine. Okay, for the last part of this video, I just want to show some of the operations from a bunch of different angles, because when I was rebuilding this thing, it would have been helpful to be able to see, oh, that's what's supposed to happen from this side when I do an addition or a subtraction. So here's an addition. Another addition here. I'll do a subtraction. Another subtraction. Okay, here's a multiplication. And I'll do a division. Redo that. I'm adding the zeros because I mentioned earlier the little lock there. Okay, here's a side view. Start with addition. Do subtraction. Here's a multiplication. All right, and here's a division. Okay, here's a view from the other side. Let's clear it. Do addition. Okay, here's subtraction. Okay, here's a multiplication. All right, let me clear it. Here's a division. Okay, here's addition. Here's subtraction. Okay, here's multiplication. Here's division. Okay, so this is, let's see. Those are the function keys there, kind of getting a view from side of that. So clear it. It's the clearing one. Do addition. This is, I'm moving the matrix all the way to the right to reset it. Another addition. Okay, here's subtraction. Do a multiplication. There's the multiply key. And reset it. The multiply key got released. Do a division. Okay, so when I'm doing the next digit of the division here, I'm pressing the backspace key, which is also looks like depressing the subtraction key here. So I'm not pressing the subtraction key. I'm pressing this guy right here. That's the matrix reset. All right, so here's kind of another weird view. I'm like right underneath the backspace on the left-hand side of the machine. Okay, I'm gonna clear it. Let's do an addition. All right, here's subtraction. Here's multiplication. Okay, we'll do a division. Okay, I want to quickly mention, you can see the from this view pretty well that this whole carriage during a division, it's subtracting repeatedly until it overflow or underflows the register, I guess. And then as soon as it underflows, it switches back to addition to, I guess, what is it? Underflow it over whatever. It goes back to before it had done that and then stays in the addition mode. And then when you cycle to the next digit, so I'm gonna do that now, subtraction of the backspace key. It subtracts again and then reverses. So. Okay, clear it. Here's addition. Okay, here's subtraction. All right, here's a multiplication. All right. I'll clear it again. And here's a division. All right. I'm not really sure how useful this view is going to be, but I figured I could just do this in case. This is the matrix sliding there, and I'm going to try to add a few more at a time so you can see that. And then these are the little levers here that on each pin for one digit that gets added. Okay, so let's do addition. All right, here is subtraction. You can see it kind of catch there a little bit. So sometimes, at least on mine, when it is trying to reset, hold that in place. It won't. You can see you can almost see the little guy that's supposed to hit it. There's a little lever right there. I'm gonna try to move it. There it is. I'm glad I got a shot of this. So you can see barely in the kind of right in the background there, that little thing moving with my hand. So when this thing goes back, it hits right there, and that is what resets the pin matrix when that slams back. So sometimes it'll get just barely caught on a pin, and it won't quite make it. And then, the good news is that's easy to see when it's happened because the top slider part right here will not go all the way back. It needs to be all the way back and reset like that. I'll go ahead and do a couple more subtractions here. Okay. Multiplication.